funding opportunities from the Inflation Reduction Act. My name's Emily Becker, and I work with Rural Cap Grow. The mission of Rural Cap is to improve the lives of low-income Alaskans. And we're bringing this to you with our partnership with Tribes Extension, which is a cooperative extension for tribes. And we have this webinar series, and we try to help get information out to people that need it. And today, I've got my special guest, Josh Hightower. He is the Community Assistance Forester with Alaska DNR Division of Forestry and Fire Protection. And he's going to be giving us an overview of the grants that they have available for disadvantaged communities. And he'll be telling us all about that. So with that, Josh, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Emily. And thanks for joining, everybody. As Emily mentioned, Josh Hightower, Community Assistance Forester with the Division of Forestry and Fire Protection Community Forestry Program. We also have Jim Renkert here. I think he's joined us now. I have a really quick PowerPoint to share. I'll just go over a little bit of the details about what we've got going on and the opportunities we have. I'll go ahead and share that. Yeah, so Inflation Reduction Grant opportunities. So this was a historic funding opportunity made possible through the USDA Forest Service. Provided over $1 billion nationwide for community forestry projects. In Alaska, I think around 6 million were allocated for community forestry projects, and that includes state allocations and other entities like Rural Cap and the Park Foundation. Division of Forestry, that's us, received a total of 750,000, and we can use 600,000 for these grants. And so we have 5 different grant types available right now. Green infrastructure, and grants for that are up to $100,000. Stream bank restoration and stability, $100,000 for those as well. Invasive tree control projects, grants can be up to $40,000 for those. Phytoremediation installments, grants up to $80,000. And then we also have community forest management plans, tree inventories, and canopy assessments. And those are a little bit different. Instead of applying for a certain amount, interested communities will contact us, and we'll connect them with a contractor who can help facilitate the management plan. So those ones work a little bit differently. So don't worry about the funding amounts for those. And we have 445,000 available for this round of grants. So the first category of grants that we have open are green infrastructure. So these grants are intended to reduce stormwater runoff, increase water quality, and improve community resilience to extreme weather events. So this includes things like bioswales, silvacells, so below ground planters for trees, and a lot of the things in this green infrastructure for interior Alaska guide will also qualify. So that's a great resource if you're looking for projects that might work for your community. The second category is stream bank restoration and stability grants. So the goal of this is to reduce erosion and prevent stream bank deterioration. So this includes things like willow stakes, spruce tree root wads, revegetation, stuff like that. The next category is invasive tree control grants. These are mostly intended for invasive chokecherries, so Prunus patus and Prunus virginiana, which in a large portion of the state have become real issues. We are also potentially accepting applications for European mountain ash in Southeast. So if you're a Southeastern community, contact us and we can talk a little more about that. Phytoremediation grants. So these grants use plants to help sequester and degrade contaminants in the ground. a lot of interesting stuff going on with those. And here's some photos of some phytoremediation projects that are going on in Fairbanks right now. So these can be used to help remediate old gas station sites, laundromats, stuff like that. And then we also have community forest management plans, tree inventories, and canopy assessments. And these are documents that are intended to help communities plan for the future, how they want to plant trees, how they want to deal with existing maintenance issues, and just get a sense of what sort of tree resources they have in their community to begin with. Eligibility, this is a huge chunk of text that I'm not going to read every word of, but um, essentially, if you're a non-federal organization, not a for-profit business and not an individual, there's a very good chance that you would qualify for these grants. A big requirement for these is projects have to take place in disadvantaged communities. So there's a few different resources you can use to determine whether or not your community is considered disadvantaged. We have the Council of Environmental Quality and Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, the Denali Commission Distressed Communities Report, and the EPA IRA Disadvantaged Communities Map. All of those resources are linked on our webpage, and we've also gone ahead and created our own internal web map that we've shared with the public that combines all three sources into one slightly easier to digest map. So I'd recommend taking a look at that as well. For the application process, all of the materials can be found on our webpage. So that's forestry.alaska.gov/community/grants in the Urban and Community Forestry Grants IRA Act section. You'll find the instructions for each grant program. Definitely take a look at those because they're slightly different for each program. We're requesting different information based on what you're applying for. So that's very important to check out. And then you'll find the application itself. We have one uniform application for 4 of the programs. Everything other than the community forest management plans. And for those, you'll submit a letter of interest, basically. And then the budget form is here as well. In the past, we have not been able to include indirect or pay for indirect. A nice development with this round of grants is that we are now able to pay indirect. I think it's 10%. And that's auto-calculated once you punch in the rest of your numbers to the budget form. So when you first open the budget form, it'll say indirect 0, but once you start punching things in, that number will change. Once you submit an application, this is just kind of an overview of the review and award process. We'll receive your application, we'll check it for completeness. Once we verify that everything's good to go, we'll send it on to the review committee, which is composed of tree experts from the Alaska Community Forest Council. They'll review the application and make sure that everything looks acceptable and appropriate for the award. If it does, you'll receive a notice of award saying, hey, keep an eye on your inbox. We're gonna be corresponding about this. And the final step is to set up a grant agreement, at which point, once that's finalized, you'll be ready to start your project. And here's contact information for myself and Jim. Will be the points of contact for these grants. And that is it as far as what I have prepared.
Phew, the chat's on fire. Sorry.
Yeah, so let's get to the questions.
First of all, I think just looking at the questions, people are interested in ideas, so I did put the the link for that Fairbanks Soil and Water booklet with the green infrastructure ideas in it. But I know there's a lot of people calling in from rural Alaskan communities. Josh, can you maybe give us some ideas of things that are not necessarily like, you know, city urban, or there's projects that could apply to people in rural Alaska, and where could we get ideas for those?
Yeah, I would still definitely recommend taking a look at that green infrastructure guide. I know we've done green infrastructure projects in the past, um, some to rural communities, and rain collection has been a good one. So folks have set up rain barrels, rain collection systems, and use them to supply water to community gardens. That could be a potential project. I think green infrastructure is maybe a little better suited to urban areas because it seeks to mimic the natural processes that happen in nature and you know slow down runoff and erosion and stuff like that. In rural communities, maybe those ecosystem services are still naturally in place, but there are certainly projects that could be done.
Awesome. Before I know there's a whole bunch of other questions. Before I move on from this, are there any other questions about the categories of projects where you might like more definition, like, you know, phytoremediation or the different categories?
I had a question about, the invasive species, and because, there's a lot of vetch and that pea straw that grow here. And I know I just kind of go and do it in certain areas, but it'd be nice to go further around and do more along the highway and this along the, because there's also the waterway. Because my worry is like if it gets in, because I live right next to Little Goldstream Creek, and my worry is like if those seed pods get in the creek, they're just gonna go into the Tanana, and they're just gonna keep spreading throughout Alaska. So if I can do what I can here to kind of, but the other thing is like the bees really like it. So um I want to
Sure.
find something to replace it with. So like a cover crop or some seed that might help.
So
In,
I'll stop you there because these invasive tree control grants are intended for trees. So if you have invasive chokecherries or something like that, we'd be more than happy to talk with you about it. If you're talking about vetch and more low growing plants like that, I think there are other people in the state that would be better suited to answer your question. Some of them may be on this call, but
I was
maybe
gonna
outside the
say,
scope of this webinar.
Gino, do you want to take that one really quickly? Is there anything addressing the spread of bird vetch in rural Alaska?
Yeah, so you could probably get into there's some invasive plant program grants that the Copper River Watershed Council gets out to help people, organizations with weed management issues, and that would cover vetch and stuff too. So that'd be one to look for. They're usually like putting them out in December or so. And then as far as ideas on like controlling vetch and replacing them with pollinators, I've been pollinator friendly plants. I've been doing some research projects, real light research projects on that. And so, yeah, we could talk about that some other time.
And then Leonardo, you also had the question about, his question is, do nonprofits qualify with a fiscal sponsor that they're a 501c3?
I think yes. Maybe Jim could speak to that.
Yes, they do. Can you
Yeah,
hear me? Can
yeah,
you
we
hear me
can hear
now?
you, Jim.
We hear you now.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And I think the key factor is disadvantaged community, and all tribes are eligible under that.
Mhm.
Okay, let's see. Next one is George was asking, what does pay indirect mean? And related to that, Amy was asking is if tribal governments have a higher indirect rate than 10%, is there, or can there be exceptions made? So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Jim, you want to take that one?
As far as we know, no, we can't do more than 10%. Let's see, what was the other, or what was the other question?
Well, it was really just wondering, I think it was just, what is the
Oh,
indirect?
what was indirect? Yeah, okay, that's for
Oh, yeah.
administrative costs, any overhead, things like that. And yeah, that's for overhead, administrative costs. Yeah.
All right, and Mel has a question. Hi, I've been excited to meet you. I know you're the new manager out at APU. So on the topic of choke cherries, are the controls primarily mechanical, pulling or cutting down, or biological genetic? Is that up to the grant recipient?
Yeah, we're not requiring any certain control methods. There are established control methods that we would like to see used, but we're not requiring that somebody use a specific control method. Most grantees end up using chemical control. It's pretty rare that mechanical only will be used. Yeah, so yeah, I hope that answers the question.
And Denise in Nome is wondering, what is it? Does it apply to shrubs also, or is it just trees?
Well, the line between tree and shrub can be a little hard to define, but these are specifically for Prunus patus, Prunus virginiana, and potentially European mountain ash.
Okay.
I'm not aware of an invasive shrub. Well, actually, that's not quite true. We've got some that are on the list, like Cotoneaster and Siberian pea shrub, but these grants are intended for the Prunus species in European mountain ash.
Okay, so are there other questions about the defined topics they have? Just keep putting them in the chat. This is going great. But Mark is asking, would a food forest garden with a greenhouse and hydroponic system with native nursery for Quinnahook be a project that he could apply for?
Apply through Rural Cap. No, we're not doing community food forest and orchard grants through the state program.
And that's actually a good segue. Thanks, Jim. I was going to put in the chat, the Rural Cap Orchards and Food Forest program has reopened for RFPs. It's on a rolling basis. And we are doing community orchards and food forests. It would not be for a greenhouse and hydroponic system though. So Mark, we can maybe connect on that later.
Is that food forest? Is that like grafting and stuff like that?
Absolutely. And so related to that, I'll put this in the chat also. We are hosting an orchards and food forest training in Anchorage in September. I'll put this in the chat also. It's free for anybody working in a disadvantaged community. We don't have travel funding, but you know, if our grow off attendees like Amy is coming, our grantees are coming to that training, and we hope to have, this is a fall one, so it's more on like sort of fall activities, but we will have one next year teaching grafting and other sort of like spring, summer activities. All right, and George is asking the $1 million question, what qualifies as a disadvantaged community? Josh, go ahead, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, so that's not a determination that we make here at Division of Forestry. I mentioned those three sources, those three maps that we have on our webpage. Basically, there's a map from the EPA, map from the Council of Environmental and Economic Justice, and a map from the Denali Commission. And they have used a bunch of different metrics to determine what qualifies as disadvantaged. I can't speak to what exactly those metrics are, but they have maps that basically you just look up your community, and if it's shaded, whatever color they chose to represent disadvantaged, then you're good to go. And when you're looking at those sources, you'll also see the internal Division of Forestry map. I would recommend taking a look at that one because it combines all the other sources and makes it a little easier to tell if you're good or not.
And I'll put the links to those in the chat here.
Emily, you were on mute.
Oops. Sorry, yeah, sorry. Yes, I really like the CGES tool, the Climate and Economic Justice one. It's pretty easy to use, and just remember that all tribes are designated as disadvantaged, even though they may not be within the actual census tract that is designated as such. And if you have questions, we're happy to help you with that.
And hi, this is Iva. I work with Emily at Rural Cap. I also just wanted to add that at least for our subawards, even if your community isn't like shaded on the map as disadvantaged, if you are serving a disadvantaged community, like we have a couple grantees that serve homeless populations, then that would qualify you as a disadvantaged community. So if you have any question at all about whether you qualify, at least for our grants, please reach out to us.
All right, so Mel is asking a question on the topic of management plans. What are some good potential vendors for that work?
We are actually in the process of reviewing we did a request for proposal for management plans. We've gotten several submittals. We're in the process of reviewing those right now. And I guess we kind of need to, these are some national firms, consulting firms. And yeah, since we're in the review process, I guess we'd rather really not say who they are, because we're scoring those now.
Yeah, and the way those applications work is if a community's interested, they'll submit a request for interest letter to us. So we'll know they're interested, and we'll work with the vendor to get that community a plan. So the community doesn't need to directly contact any vendors or anything. We'll work as the middleman on that.
Awesome. Back to Mark. So a tree nursery in Quinnipiac would it count they need trees to secure soils from erosion because of climate change?
Securing soils from erosion, it could potentially be a stream bank restoration project. We'd need to talk more about the tree nursery aspect of it. That could be a little tricky, but definitely erosion protection is good.
Thank you. And I hope I have not missed any questions.
Denise had a question about treeless communities. Yeah, Denise, it's going to be tough to do any of the categories we have. Stream bank restoration, invasive trees, green infrastructure, in a treeless community. The projects really need to have some aspects of trees.
It is an interesting question. It's, like do we think, what is a forest? Can it be an ecosystem without trees? I don't know. Josh, I'll let you think about that one. So more specifically, George is asking how many of the grants have been awarded yet? Oh, and Jim answered 3. Okay. All right.
Can I ask?
Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a specific question about the green infrastructure grants. It does say in the application to have a description and design plans of the infrastructure installment, but can part of the actual application be that you are creating that design, or does that really already have to be done? Like what specific well, green infrastructure would be going into this site that you have planned?
So the question is, can the money be used for design?
For part of it, yeah, if the design isn't complete, like to actually be having someone help you with designing the green infrastructure for and implementation, but can part of that also be design?
Ooh, good. That's a good question. I don't know. We have not had that one before.
Just speaking off the top of my head here, I think you would need to have a pretty good idea of what you're gonna do submitted with your application so that we can, vet it. But yeah, maybe follow up with us after this meeting and we can talk a little more about that.
Okay.
And keep in mind, those grants have a maximum of 100,000, but they have a minimum of 30,000. We found that it's hard to do a standalone green infrastructure project for less than 30.
So I'm going to put you on the spot, Red, since you're here with Alaska Village Initiatives. Has all your grant money been spent? Are you still looking for projects?
I'm coming to second. So no, our projects are going to stretch out over 4 years. So we had 7 applications this year and we accepted 5 of them. 3 of them are food forest and planting blueberry bushes in southeast. We planted one of our subgrantees planted 14,500 trees this year, and there's a seed saving program going on. But our grant from the Forest Service is to specifically address villages, so that's where we've been doing our work.
Awesome. Is there, do you want to put any contact info in the chat if people want to?
I'll do it. We have we set up a website, so it's and we'll be putting out a call for whoops, that should be a period between USFS.
Okay. If you're watching on YouTube, that's USFS for US Forest Service .akvillage.org.
Red, what are the maximum and minimum amounts for your grants, or do you have that?
We floated depending upon what the project is. We have a couple of projects that are going we're working on that will float over 2 years. So the fund was a little bit different. We also have a grant that's running 18 months, so it popped over a top of 100. We try to stay in that neighborhood, but if it seems that it's really worthwhile and really benefits the community, we'll sneak it up to 120.
Thank you.
I had a question regarding that. So we just finished our indigenous train the trainer. We had people coming in from the villages, coming to Calypso Farm, teaching about ecology, conservation, a lot of that, building soil health, growing food, a lot of things. I'm wondering and I was looking to possibly either enhance their programs, support them. I was one of the trainers. I do beekeeping, a lot of conservation on the property, but I was also we did some different, had some soil testing done, had people kind of coming in doing some of that same kind of food forest ideas, but kind of more keeping it indigenous plants and healing plants and things like that. And I didn't know if that was in the radar or realm or how that might fit. But that's
If you go to the website, the kind of the specific things that we're working on are in, this is going to fit within our pool of money, or this is what doesn't qualify. One of the villages we helped fund the youth stewards forestry project, stewardship project this summer. And I think that we may do that as well next year because a lot of great things came out of it. Our things that we're able to do are a little bit different than DNR's, probably a little broader as well. I put my email in the chat, so if you want to drop me a line, that's fine. Part of our work this summer has been helping NRCS create a soils map for villages. So we're running all over the place. There isn't a charge for doing it. And while it's not necessarily related to the Forest Service grant, we have funds to be able to travel around the state to do that because it's a good first step in being able to establish what the ground is like before food forest or anything else are put in.
Thank you. What other questions might you have?
Hi, yeah. It's in developing these grants, what kind of background as far as making sure that the community is involved in writing up a program? What are the requirements for involving neighborhoods and in rural Alaska, the members of the community?
Well, I guess if the eligible applicants are tribal organizations, Native corporations, and nonprofits. So I guess what you're asking is, does the entire community have to have buy-in? And I guess that's not something we would kind of depend on the organization that's applying for the grant.
I'm just thinking because I noticed that some of those disadvantaged areas were in Anchorage, where I am, and I'm just wondering how you figure out what's the best program to apply for in those areas. I mean, it might be that just somebody or an organization thinks that a certain thing is best, but they're missing out on something else that might be more important for that neighborhood.
It's a good question, George. I think you're looking at a deeper question of how do we know what a community wants and needs because you have to ask that community, which is particularly hard in disadvantaged communities because there may not be capacity for applying for grants like this, and taking on this kind of administrative, job. I know with, Rural Cap, we've had luck working with, like Title I schools, places that are already familiar and working in that community, so that you know what's going on. And then you just got to go in and talk to people. So you need some connection, some authentic connection. Like Rural Cap is doing some projects at our supportive housing sites in Anchorage. So, those are places we already know the people and can have the connection.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Emily. I was wondering if you could put in the chat some contact information about some other programs with Rural Cap. I didn't want to take any earlier time, but I'm wondering, I had some questions and somebody told me I should reach out to you guys.
Yes, we're grow@ruralcap.org. Whoops, sorry, that just went to one person. Here we go. Yeah, and if we don't have a funding opportunity that it doesn't apply to this one, there's lots of other ones, and I will shout out the Rural Cap Foundation. It's actually not a Rural Cap program, but it's associated with us and how frankly how we brought Toyo stoves to Alaska. Anyway, there are the Rural Cap Foundation is specifically only for rural communities. Small grants for things like community gardens. Leonardo, that may be a really good one for you. Oh, and yeah, there's lots of stuff going on. So if we don't have it personally in-house, we should be able to refer you to somebody or a different program. And I'll put the Rural Cap Foundation link in the chat as well. And it's there are 3 different deadlines each year. So the next one coming up is August 31st. But it's an easy application. So if you wanted to pull it together in the next 2 weeks, you could. Oh, and so I just forgot, Mel was asking any tips on successful applications. Josh, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start by saying something that should be obvious, but apparently it's not. Make sure you fill out all the information fully and completely. We get a lot of applications that are not quite up to snuff, so that's really important. Especially, you'll see if you open up the application, there's a project details and activities section. That's kind of the bread and butter of the whole application. So make sure you spend time on that. Other than that, we like to see that there's buy-in from other organizations in the community. So there's a section in the application where you can talk about that a little bit, and having some technical expertise is also really valuable. So if there's someone you can reach out to, if maybe you yourself don't have the technical knowledge to put together a fully developed application, reach out to somebody in your community who does, or reach out to us and we can connect you with folks who can help with the technical aspects.
Thanks. And Nicole was asking, is it first come, first serve on these grants, or what's the deadline and how will you do the evaluation?
These are competitive grants. So for green infrastructure, stream bank restoration, invasive tree control, and phytoremediation, you have to turn in an application, and the applications need to be received by September 27th. For the community forest management plans, you have to turn in a formal request for interest by September 15th. And there's a template for the request for interest on our webpage. It's it's like 2 or 3 lines to fill out. So that one's pretty easy.
I really encourage you, if you have an idea that maybe doesn't exactly fit into all of those categories, reach out to Josh and Jim and, just run it by them, see what they think. It may be, one reason they're releasing this RFP is because, they just didn't have enough applicants the first time around. Maybe they'd be, interested in funding something, a little bit different. And I'm just, just speaking out of turn a little bit, but you never know. I'd say go for it. All right. Oh, wow. So Mel, with a good finishing question, what is your hope for Alaskan communities with this funding opportunity?
Well, the hope is a little bit different for each opportunity. But really our hope is that we can grow urban forests, community forests, and maximize the benefits that they provide through ecosystem services, social benefits, monetary benefits. We really want to promote all of those things. And for the community forest management plans in particular, having a plan like that is kind of a capstone for a community. It really indicates that they are forward thinking and have a plan and goals for their urban forest. So our hope is to get as many of those out as possible, as many as we can afford at least. Jim, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think you did a great job there on that, Josh. Goal is to help communities plant trees, preserve trees, care for trees. Ultimately this is about the trees where you live, and healthy communities through these types of grants that we're providing.
Thanks, everybody. I think if there's no other questions.
I've got another question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I've worked in the woods for a long time and I have a forestry degree, and I've worked around herbicides a lot, and I really don't trust the safety of them at all because I know people have been harmed by the use of them. And I'm wondering if there is, since these are competitive grants, if there would be some sort of a requirement to use herbicides in controlling invasive tree species, or if it would be ranked higher if you include that as part of your plan. Because I really don't think that, I mean, there's just no way to, I mean, these are, Prunus patis is almost entirely a creek side problem. And it's just no way to keep the herbicides out of the water, whether you are injecting it or spraying it. And from what I've seen, they're doing both. And so I have real concerns about that, and about whether there's some sort of priority given to plans that utilize that.
No, there's no priority given to that. These are competitive grants, and we leave it up to the applicant and the landowner on what method they want to use.
And George, I would encourage you to reach out to Gino about that as well. Maybe, Gino, if you're still on there, if you could put your contact info in the chat. All right, anybody else? Thanks for coming, everyone.